All right, thank you for following on social media and getting the word about people who are missing. We'll keep tracking this throughout the show. So there is an old saying, those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. That's why I keep asking lawmakers about how to avoid the mess that delayed relief after Superstorm Sandy. Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont was in that fight, and I asked him about the challenge with Harvey and upcoming battles over immigration and health care that he attacks in his new book, which is called Bernie Sanders' Guide to Political Revolution. Sounds like the basis for a political campaign, maybe? Wait until you see how he liked that question. You had expressed some concerns throughout the campaign process about how Donald Trump would fare as president in times of crisis. We are in a crisis with Harvey. How do you think he's handling it?
Well, I think the issue is not so much how Trump is handling it. His public statements are fine. The issue is what we as a nation are going to do. And I'll tell you something, Chris. Right now, there's a lot of suffering and dislocation in Houston. What I'm seeing there is just some extraordinary bravery of people coming together. And by the way, I hope Trump learns from that lesson that in Houston right now, people don't care whether you're black or you're white or you're Latino or you're gay or you're straight. People are helping each other, which is what this country is supposed to be about. People in Houston are coming together, and I hope Trump stops dividing up the American people.
Well, he would say, and his supporters say, that he doesn't have that lesson to learn, that he was just being fair about violence being on both sides when it came to what happened in Charlottesville, and that he's not a divider, he's a uniter. What do you make of that?
Well, I happen to strongly disagree with that assertion. When the President of the United States talks about nice people, quote unquote, nice people on both sides, let me be very clear. There are no nice Nazis, and we have got to do everything that we can to end the kind of bigotry and hatred which these people are espousing.
We'll get back to that discussion, but right now I want to focus on Harvey, the thing that the federal government's going to have to do. And by that I mean the executive with the request, and then you in Congress with the follow-through, is give the money to the survivors in Harvey, not just once, but each time that they ask, and give them what they need. It would sound right now like that's a foregone conclusion. Of course that'll happen, but it didn't happen during Sandy. Why didn't it happen, and how do you avoid it this time?
Well, it didn't happen because we have an increased right-wing majority in the Congress who think that their function in life is to give tax breaks to billionaires and cut back on all kinds of programs that the middle class and working families need. So there were some of those folks who said, hey, you know, we're sorry that in Hurricane Sandy, a lot of people have been displaced, a lot of people are hurt, but you know what, we just, you know, we don't want to use federal money to help them. I would say to you, Chris, that if we are a nation, our job now as a people is to stand with the folks who are struggling in Houston and in Texas and maybe in Louisiana, just as I will hope and expect that if Vermont suffers another crisis, and we've had our share of floods, or other states are hard hit, the people of Texas will be there for them. That is what is called a nation. We stand together in times of need. I believe that will be the sentiment in Congress.
The defense of the posture during Sandy by the GOP lawmakers who didn't vote for it is that it needed to have budget set-offs, it wasn't a clean bill, and there was a lot of pork larded on to the relief. Is that a fair appraisal, in your opinion, having been involved in the process?
Well, first of all, no. I think that that sentiment is dead wrong. Of course, we are going to help people who are stranded, who have lost their homes, lost everything that they own, and you don't have to cut health care or education or environmental protection to help those people. That is what we have historically done as a nation, and that is what we must continue to do. Second of all, the argument that there was pork. Look, this is tough stuff. But I think the OMB or the CBO, somebody has looked at that and found that there was a minimal amount of pork. People were hurting, and we've got to respond to that in a responsible way. And that means that the officials in Texas are going to have to give good documentation. We don't want any pork, but we do want to deal with the tragedy and the suffering that people are experiencing.
Do you think Congress will get at it right away? And do you think that you'll see both sides coming together?
I do. I honestly do. And again, Chris, this is what this country is supposed to be about.
So then you get to the larger question. Why do we keep having these 100-year storms like every other year? So I asked the president's senior counsel, Kellyanne Conway, about it. She berated me. And then we heard Secretary Pruitt today push the same suggestion to the side, and that is, should part of the conversation at some point be about why these happen and if climate change has something to do with it? Both of them dismissed that as being disrespectful to the plight of the survivors on the ground. What do you think?
No, this is what I think. Obviously, the task right now is to save lives, to do everything that we can to rescue people. The task right now, and it's a very difficult task, is to make sure that people who have lost their homes, lost everything that they own, are treated with dignity and respect, that we try to find safe housing for those people. That is the immediate task. But I think it is pretty dumb not to ask some hard questions about why more rain is now falling and has fallen in the Houston area, as I understand it, than any time that people can have measured. Is it related to climate change? Is some of the intensity and the magnitude of this rainfall related to climate change? I think most scientists believe it is. And the right question to be asking is, what does this mean for the future? Are we going to see more storms, more rainfall of this magnitude? And of course, that is an issue that has to be looked at. It is my view that Trump is dead wrong when he talks about climate change being a hoax. I think it is a very serious problem for our country and around the world. I believe that we have to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel to sustainable energy and energy efficiency. I also think that this tragedy in Texas should have us take another hard look at infrastructure in America and why it is that all over our country we have major disrepair in terms of roads and bridges and dams and levees. So there's a lot to be learned from the storm. But the first task, of course, is to rescue people and to help those people who are hurting right now.
One of the things that you raise in this book that I have in my hand, Bernie Sanders' Guide to Political Revolution. Forgive my banana hands. They're covering your title. There it is. Now it's clear for everybody to see. I have some questions for you about this book, sir. One of the most ambitious proposals in it is your idea for health care as single payer. And it's good that you have Kamala Harris with you, but the GOP is against this. They see it as anathema to a market system, free market. Even the Democratic nominee, Hillary Clinton, said it is a dream. It will never happen. Why push for something that both sides of the aisle think can't happen?
Well, it is certainly not going to happen when you have a president like Donald Trump and Republican leadership that wanted to throw up to 32 million people off of health insurance. I understand that, but you got to start this fight somewhere. And what people understand is there is something wrong when we are spending twice as much per capita on health care as do the people of any other nation, when we are the only major country on earth, Chris, that doesn't understand that health care is a right, not a privilege, when at a time when the drug companies are making unbelievable profits, charging us the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs, 1 out of 5 Americans can't afford the medicine that they need. The truth of the matter is that more and more people understand that our current system is designed not to provide quality care to all people in a cost-effective way, but to make huge profits for the drug companies, the insurance companies, and others.
But who says that the solution?
More and more sentiment.
But who says the solution
is
to have the government be entirely in control of it? You'll have efficiency arguments. You'll have that you're taking away people's choice and their ability to pick the best plan for them. Even Clinton said that it's a dream.
Well, even Clinton. Well, I ran against Hillary Clinton. I disagreed with Hillary Clinton. I live 50 miles away from the Canadian border. They have a Medicare for all single-payer system. By and large, Medicare in this country is a single-payer system. People have and must have freedom of choice with regard to the doctor, that they go to, the hospital that they go to. And by the way, in the current system today, there are many plans which obviously limit your freedom of choice in terms of doctors and hospitals. Here is the bottom line. We are spending far more per person on health care than do the people of any other country. Our health care outcomes are not particularly good compared to the rest of the world. Our infant mortality rate is higher. Our life expectancy is lower. Health care, to my mind, is a human right. We have got to join the rest of the industrialized world and guarantee health care to every man, woman, and child as a right.
Well, you will have a fight on your hands, and I look forward to covering that. Couple more questions. Political revolution, that's what it says on this book, and it takes us back to an earlier conversation we were having. During Charlottesville, the president was making this argument, which he thought was constructive. Okay, these guys on the right, the KKK, the white supremacists, they're bad. But what we've seen coming out of Charlottesville is people who support the president are now making the argument that the left has its own problem. Antifa and other groups where you saw them beating up people this weekend, and there are common criminal activities involved with what they call protests, others would call riots, and that the left owns them. They're on your team. Do you accept that?
No, what I accept is that we have got to do everything that we can to stop the spread of the ideology of Nazism. You know, we lost 400,000 men and women in World War II fighting Nazism. And I think the way to do it, and we saw that in Boston and we see that in communities all over this country, is people come out in peaceful demonstrations. So you have a handful of Nazis surrounded by thousands of people who are going to do everything they can to end hatred and bigotry in America.
There's no question that it's a malignancy.
Opposition.
There's no question. There's no question that white supremacy and all that goes along with it is a malignancy. No question. The argument becomes, but there is another malignancy, that these Antifa people and like groups, they are equally malignant in their own way because of the violence that they cause and what they attack, and they belong to the left.
Chris,
do you agree with that?
Chris, I don't, I mean, this is just belong to the left. I do not believe that people should use violence in counter-protest. I'm strongly against that. The best antidote to these Nazi-type demonstrations is what we saw in Boston and elsewhere, where thousands of people come out and peacefully protest and make it clear that the overwhelming majority of the people are in opposition to this hatred. Violence is not something that I support in any way, shape, or form, and I hope people stop that type of effort.
The book is a guide. It is a message. But it begs a question, sir. Who is the messenger? Who is the warrior of the light to bring this to the American people and make it happen? We have an election some years from now. You'll have your midterms and you'll have your presidential election. You got two schools of thought. One is, it's got to be the guy on the cover. It's got to be Bernie. And then there's another school of thought that can't be Bernie. Bernie's too old. What does Bernie Sanders say? Are you the messenger for this message?
Well, there is a third school of thought, Chris, and that is that the media never, ever gives up. And instead of focusing on real issues, they keep talking about never-ending campaigns. Chris, honestly, you've heard me say this to you before.
Yeah, and I've never liked the answer.
Media wants to know who's going to run
I've
when.
never liked the answer.
All right. You're not going to like the answer.
I never liked it.
Wrong.
It matters who runs.
You are wrong.
It matters who fights the fight.
Of course it matters. Of course Chris, of course it matters who runs. But we don't have to have never-ending elections. We just had an election 6 months ago. It never ends. You know, in the UK, they take 2 months to elect their government. Canada, the same. All over the world, we never stop elections. People are sick and tired of it. They want me to go back to Washington to deal with climate change, to deal with health care, to deal with education, to deal with the issues that impact their lives. They do not want to see never-ending elections. So the long and the short of it, Chris, is I don't know what I'm going to be doing. It's a long way away from an election. And let me suggest you'll be one of the first to know. But now is much too early.
The book reads like a campaign manual. That's all I'm saying, Senator. You can yell at me all you want. I still think what I think.
I'm not yelling at you. I love you. Not yelling at you, Chris. But if you read the book thoroughly, what it's not about is a person. It is about the need for millions of people to become involved in the political process. Because right now, We increasingly have a political system dominated by a handful of billionaires who spend unlimited sums of money electing folks who want to cut Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and education and give tax breaks to people who don't need it. The antidote is involving people in the political process. That is what that book is about.
I hear you. A message and a messenger often go together. I'll take you at your word. We'll see what happens in time. And Senator Sanders, you're always welcome here to talk about what matters. Thank you. And thank you for the book, even though it's an unsigned copy.
Thank you.